Hey there, Dragon Folk. How are we all doing today? Hopefully, you guys are doing great. My name is Alex, and I am here to show you a fantastic video about another commoner deck that I am using for Flesh and Blood. This is something that I've actually just tuned a little bit of, and I do quite like it, but as always, deck building not entirely my strength yet. So I do want to make sure that I go about showing you guys kind of my own thought process into how this deck works, and also how you can utilize this as well. What we are doing today, as you can tell, we are looking over Dash. Dash being a super awesome deck into Commoner at this very moment. She's very, very aggro. Not so much control, not mid-range. She is aggro all day. She is boosting till nobody's business. Now, for those of you who don't know how Dash works, I'll go over a little bit of a test hand to kind of show you how the deck kind of runs, and what situations you might be looking for as far as making the deck work to the best of its ability. But to give you a quick rundown, Dash is a mechanologist, so she can use mechanologist cards, and specifically in Commoner, you can only use common cards in your main deck, or you can have rare or common cards in your equipment slots. So I'm going to currently go over what the hero does, as well as the equipment, and then we'll get into the deck, and we'll do a little deck overview, and then I'll go ahead and go into some test hands and show you guys kind of my own thought process, much like we did with our Arachne video, which if you wanted to check out that, check out the top right of the screen there. There should be a link to the Arachne Solitary Confinement deck that I made, which I definitely really enjoy, and if you enjoy playing Assassin, it's another one to check out too. But let's take a look at Dash. So Dash starts the game with a Mechanologist item with cost 2 or less in the arena. That card is going to be, in fact, Hyperdriver. And we'll go over Hyperdriver later on in the set, but Hyperdriver is the only item you run in this deck. There are 2 Hyperdrivers, so one of them goes in your deck, and the other one goes out into the field. So it is important. Hyperdriver is what's going to get you some additional resources, and I'll show that later on in the episode too. So, but first, let's go over Dash's equipment. Now, the equipment for Commoner is very limited because you can only have rares or commons. So you don't have access to any of the crazy legendary equipment or any of the majestics. It's only rares and commons. So it is limited to that point, but Dash actually utilizes some pretty interesting stuff here. So first, we're going to look at Dash's equipment that you really only kind of want to use if you're going second. And if you're going to go second, you're going to want to play Talishar, the Lost Prince. Talishar is a easy card to pay for 2, and you attack. After 3 attacks, Talishar is destroyed because it'll have rust counters on it. Every time you attack at the beginning of your end phase, if it attacked, if it has 3 or more rust counters on it, destroy it. So it is pretty important to keep those in mind when you are attacking with Talishar, but it does come in for 4 attack, and it only costs 2 resources, which is on rate for this deck and the speed at which it goes. Now, of course, this opportunity means that you kind of have to work a lot faster. You want to try to tie this in as much as possible. And for being a breakpoint, it's very important to kind of get that knowledge in there to know when to choose to attack with a boost card or when to attack with Talishar. So, but if you're going to go first, I do suggest, and something I've tested out a little bit here now, is Plasma Barrel Shot. Now, this is the shotgun of the game pretty much. And how this card works is a once per turn action, you can remove a steam counter from Plasma Barrel Shot and attack. Now, obviously, it doesn't start with a steam counter on it, but it does have the ability to pay 2 as an action, and if there are no steam counters on Plasma Barrel Shot, you can put a steam counter on it and then go again. The attack of Plasma Barrel Shot is an X, as you can see down there, and X is equal to 1 plus the number of times you have boosted this combat chain. So you are essentially going to be going for, it's always going to be 1, and then if you boost it 4 times or 3 times, this will come in for 4. And you don't have to pay a resource to remove the steam counter to attack. So think of this like another 4 power attack that you can just tie in at the end of your long boosted combo chain. Now we'll get into what boost is later for those of you who don't know what Dash is and what the boost mechanic is. But just essentially think of it like giving your cards go again, but you have to banish the top card of your deck, and if it's a Mechanologist card, you get go again. All of your cards in this deck are Mechanologist cards, so it will get go again. Then let's look at the equipment that she runs. So plasma barrel shot you're going to want to do if you're doing first, simply because what you can do is you can pay the 2 to put a counter on plasma barrel shot, put a card in arsenal, and then draw up to the amount of cards, and then your opponent doesn't get to filter the cards in their hand, and on top of it, there's no way they're going to be able to present 20 damage on their turn, whereas you may be able to if you have like quite a few reds. If you have like 2 reds and a blue, even 3 reds and a blue, I think you'd probably be able to make it happen in regards to doing at least somewhere between 18 and like 20 some damage in a matter of 1 turn. And that is a huge threat in most cases. So just keep that in mind for plasma barrel shot. But let's go over the equipment now. So for the headpiece, we have 2 headpieces. We have the Iron Rod Helm, which typically you'd be running unless you are going against a wizard or someone that has arcane damage. In most cases, it's just wizard. You'd be running the Null Rune Hood, which gives you Arcane Barrier 1. So that prevents that stuff there. Next, for your chest pieces, I run 3 different ones. We have Ironhide Plate for those really, really big, heavy hitters. We have Heart and Cross Strap for when you're still trying to boost pretty heavy. Heart and Cross Strap essentially will allow you to play one of your 2-cost attacks in hand for free, which is really, really good. So keep that in mind. You're going to want to use this first before you start your combo, because this is going to break the chain in case you're looking for like a wider chain with boosting. Then, of course, Null Rune Robe for the wizards. I'm running all Null Rune also, so we have Null Rune Gloves and a Goliath Gauntlet. Again, Goliath Gauntlet is going to give that same card that you gave a discount to with Heart and Cross Strap plus 2 attack, so that's going to make it even more devastating if you wanted to start off your turn with that. Null Rune Glove is also another piece for the wizard matchup. And then your final pieces here are the Ironhide Legs, which you can use to defend things, right? Or Achilles Accelerator. Achilles Accelerator has Arcane Barrier, so it does take the place of the Null Rune Boots. And you can also, at instant speed, destroy Achilles Accelerator to gain an action point. So, for instance, your boost got stopped for some reason, or you wanted to go through your chain, you ended your chain, and then you wanted to play Talishar. You can always go ahead and do that there. So, Achilles Accelerator is just a way for you to kind of boost that general stuff over. But in most cases, what you're generally running in this case is you're going to be running your Iron Rod Helm, your Heart and Cross Strap, your Goliath Gauntlet, and your Achilles Accelerator. This is your main amount here. These cards here are all going to be going into your sideboard, essentially. So that is what you're looking for here is these guys. And then normally this is the weapon you were going to be choosing unless you were going second. And then you were going to want to play Talishar instead, just so you get that opportunity to attack, because you're not going to want to defend attacks and then pay to put a token on here and then wait. So it is kind of important to do that. So now that we have an idea behind the equipment, let's go ahead and take a look at the deck and see kind of what we're packing here. So now that I have the deck lined out, I'm going to kind of give you an idea of what we have in the deck and why we run it specifically. So for the first few cards, we have a Rainbow of Throttle. Now, Throttle is a pretty good card simply because it costs 2, so you can discount it with Heart and Cross Strap. 2 is an easy resource for us to get with our Hyperdriver as well, and it's got that boost mechanic on there. So as you'll read there, as an additional cost to play Throttle, you may banish the top card of your deck. If it's a Mechanologist card, Throttle gains go again. As a big disclaimer, every card in this deck is a Mechanologist card, so boost will always happen, which is really, really good. So you have Throttle, which comes in for 6, which means it's also a popper, very important into those Illusionist decks. But you have also Throttle Yellow and Throttle Blue. Both of these all still break points, essentially. You're going to need to utilize 2 cards, so these are really, really great cards to start a combo off or to even start ending the game with things like this, because it is going to be a lot harder to block out these cards and have your opponent keep tempo than get rid of that stuff there. So next up, we're going to go over the one item in this deck, which is Hyperdriver. Now, you'll see Hyperdriver enters the arena with 3 Steam counters on it, and when Hyperdriver has no Steam counters on it, destroy it. So what this does is a once per turn effect. When you boost a card, remove a Steam counter from Hyperdriver and gain a resource. So the first time you boost, you will remove a Steam counter from Hyperdriver and you'll gain another resource. So this means that when you pitch a blue to pay for a throttle, you'll have one floating resource, and then because of Hyperdriver, you'll then of course get another resource, so that'll give you two more resources to utilize in whichever fashion you wish. So a lot of free resources is always a big deal, and of course, with there being two of them in here, it is very, very important that that is, something that you can utilize later on in the game too. Because I was running a version of this deck previously that only ran one Hyperdriver, and once you were out of Hyperdriver, that was it. There was no real big change to most things. It was like, okay, cool. If I got Hyperdriver down and it was done, I essentially had to slow down my turns, and it ended up never working out. So two Hyperdriver has worked out for me significantly. Then next, we'll look at the blue Combustible Courier. So Combustible Courier, we're only running the blue version, simply because it does feel a little bad sometimes in most cases to block 2, but it costs 2, it's a blue, so obviously we want a blue to pay for our stuff. But if it hits, the next attack you boost this combat chain gets +3, and it also has boost itself. It does also block for 3, which everything in this deck does, mind you, which is really, really good, except for Hyperdriver. Blocking for 3, even if it's a blue block for 3, super good. If we have an opportunity to play it because our opponent is out of cards, then this is something that we can utilize, especially towards the end of the game. They're going to want to use their resources to block this, because otherwise the next thing's coming in for a lot of damage. Then we have a red and yellow of Payload. Payload being another popper, mind you, so you do have another popper in case you were going against those illusionists. But more importantly, this is how you end your combo chains. Because if you end it with Payload, if you've boosted this combat chain, Payload gains Dominate. Dominate is a great way to end games, because normally your opponent does not have enough resources to block a whole bunch of stuff, and Dominate only lets you block with one card from hand. So unless they run a bunch of D-reacts, which is unfortunately a good portion of the meta at this very moment, or they have a lot of armor still up, Payload will be able to do at least 3 damage, if not 2, and this is a great way to kind of end your game. Again, it also only costs 2, so theoretically you could play Throttle to get 6 out, and then you could play Payload to get another 6 out, this one with Dominate. So it's going to start pushing your opponent to have to start blocking cards and giving up their own tempo, simply so you could continue to push for game. Of course, you run the yellow version too, because 5 damage is also pretty breakpointy, so it definitely is still going to have to get 2 cards out. So that's not bad there. The next ones we have are pretty crucial to the deck. Crankshaft is a card that came out in Dynasty, and I run the Rainbow of Crankshaft. That's 2 reds, 2 yellows, and 2 blues. And the reason being is, again, the red Crankshafts and the yellow Crankshafts are really good for damage because they're over breakpoint, and they boost also, which is really important too. And then the blues are normally used for resources. But the cool news is that Crankshaft has an ability that says when it's banished to pay a boost cost, you can put a steam counter on a Hyperdriver you control. So this essentially means that if you go to boost your first card and you end up boosting a Crankshaft to the banished zone, you take that top card of your deck, put it to the banished zone, and it's a Crankshaft, you get a counter back on Hyperdriver, which means you essentially got a free resource, which is huge. And running 6 of them gives you a better opportunity to get that free resource. In most cases, you want these to stay in the deck strictly to keep up that Hyperdriver maneuver. But of course, if you're not winning by turn 4 or 5, you're usually pretty screwed. That's kind of just how this deck runs. But sometimes it can go a little bit longer, especially if your opponent kind of messes up. But that is still a great way for you to continually generate resources for free simply by banishing a Crankshaft. Zipper Hit, I also run all 6 of, 2 reds, 2 yellows, and 2 blues. Zipper Hit, it costs 1 resource, which means that even if you pay for a whole bunch of stuff, if you have a free resource at the end of the turn from Hyperdriver, you can use Zipper Hit, and it comes in for 5 for red, 4 for blue, or 4 for yellow, and 3 for blue. Normally, again, the blues are used for a lot more resources, but it is nice to still be able to continuously boost and come in for this big damage for only 1 resource, which is really, really good. And it blocks for 3. That's what we want. 0 to 60 is another block for 3 0-cost card that we have in here. This is probably one of the more crazier chain extending cards. It costs 0 and it's just got boost, so you can boost it. Of course, 4 at a breakpoint, 0 for 4 with go again is super above rate, and really it's the rate these days, but like it's super great rate, so you're going to want to utilize the reds very, very well. The yellows, of course, are also super great because 3 damage is still enough to want to force a card. And the blues, again, normally for resources, but 2 damage you can still boost out if you can swing it by, because any damage you can get out for free is great. Jumpstart now is a new card that I got from Dynasty. Now this is, I thought about not running, I didn't run this in my original build, but I did think about running it now simply because we are more than likely going to run into it, especially with how often we boost. The odds of me pulling a Jumpstart in my hand at the end of my turn are usually pretty good. And Jumpstart comes in for 5 for 1 pretty much. If you control a Hyperdriver, it costs 1 less to play. So originally they cost 2, which is still on rate for the deck. But it boosts, and you get to play it for 1 instead of for 2. So it's much like Zipper Hit with an additional cost of having to have a Hyperdriver. So not too terrible, but it definitely is nice to get some additional big damage in there, especially anything that's over 4 damage is what you'd want there. Next up, we have Urgent Delivery. Urgent Delivery is another Mechanologist card. This one does not have boost, but when it hits, you can put a Mechanologist item from your hand into the arena with cost less than or equal to the number of times you boost it. So the only one we have here is Hyperdriver. So if you boost once, and then you play Urgent Delivery, if it ends up hitting, which also it's a 0 for 4, which is on rate, if it ends up hitting, you're able to take a Hyperdriver from your hand and just slap it onto the board. But if you don't have any Hyperdriver in hand, you want to save it, you can always do that too. This is just an opportunity for you to sneak that little bit of damage, because normally they're only going to block with 1 card, unless they block with armor or something, because usually you block on hits with armor. And this ends up being a super good opportunity for you to just get another resource generator onto the board. And then finally, our last card is Overblast. Now, Overblast is a 2-cost 5, so much like Jumpstart, except the cool thing is it gets plus X, where X is the number of times you boosted this combat chain. So even if you end up boosting twice, you end up getting this in for 7 damage. So a 2 for 7, that's good. That's really good. 2 for 7 is good. That 7's another big breakpoint, and you're able to get a bunch of damage off of there. So a great way to kind of end your chain with this one or with this one. It's always great. So your chain enders are Payload, Urgent Delivery, or Overblast. Otherwise, it's just trying to boost out as much damage as possible. Got to make that happen. So I'm going to give you guys a few test hands, and we'll kind of show you guys how the deck runs, and I'll give you an idea about how the resources work and what you're kind of looking for as far as this goes, and we'll kind of go from there. So let me give you an example right now. All right, so let's take a look at what we've got going on here. So now that we have a little setup here, let's just assume that we are going first, sorry. First with Plasma Barrel. So first we're going to go ahead and we're going to bring this little counter over here to show that we have some Hyperdriver things here. So we're going to upscale this little guy here to kind of show that off. So here we have our starting hand, essentially, which we're going to go ahead and draw up to. Draw 4, and this is our hand. We got a Payload, a 0 to 60, an Overblast, and a Zipper Hit. So in this specific scenario, we don't have anything that's insanely great. And Payload, a lot of the stuff is kind of like really, really expensive, right? So in most cases, what I'd probably do here is if I was going first, I'd go ahead and I would pitch this Payload to put a counter on to my Plasma Barrel Shot. That puts that Plasma Barrel Shot counter in there. I get a go again. And then with that go again, I'm probably going to go ahead and put, I would say maybe we'll put this, maybe we'll put the Zipper Hit down here in the arsenal. So let's just assume that's in the arsenal. And then we'll draw it to 2 cards. Now, obviously, we didn't boost, so we are not getting any kind of boosting abilities here. So we're not going to lose any Hyperdriver counters, and that's that. So now it's your opponent's turn. Your opponent is getting ready to kind of do some stuff here. And unfortunately for us, we have drawn a whole bunch of stuff that does not boost. So what we are going to do is we are going to probably block out with this hand. I would assume, because it blocks for 3. You have to block out some stuff here. I'd say maybe we'll probably end up blocking out with an Urgent, and we'll block out with an Overblast. Keep these cards in hand, take a little bit of damage, and then it'll be our turn, to which we will then go ahead and probably, at this point, we could probably 0 to 60, and we can boost. Although I don't know if I want to boost. I think at this rate, I might just Overblast, just to get it out of the way. No boost, come in for 5, and get no additional nonsense here. We'll keep that in there. Obviously, they're probably going to block out a good portion of that. And then we are going to keep our Hyperdriver stacks. Oops. We're going to keep our Hyperdriver stacks, and then we're going to drop to 4. So now we have a different hand here. This looks significantly better. So, again, at this point, we'll probably take a little bit of damage. I don't think, again, it'll be enough to kill us. But in this specific scenario, this is kind of one of those hands where you don't have a lot of resource-specific things, but it can be pretty good. So, in this turn, let's go ahead and optimize to the best of our ability, which is we will pop our Heart and Cross Trap at the beginning of our turn. Right? So let's go ahead and flip that over. Let's also pop our Goliath Gauntlet. So what that does now is we're going to have a Throttle to start. Throttle is going to come in, and we are going to boost it, which means we're going to take the top card of our deck, banish it. It is a Mechanologist card, so we are going to go ahead and get Go Again on there. And this is going to come in for 6 plus 2. So this is coming in for 8 damage. I'll use these dice to kind of show you what I mean as far as the damage goes. So 8 damage here being presented to your opponent. And you have Go Again. And it costs you no resources to play this card, which is really, really good. And then, of course, this is going to trigger because you boost it. So you're going to bring this down to 2. And you're going to get a free resource right there. Just put that at 1. You get a free little resource there. Then with that free resource, you can go ahead and you can play Jumpstart. Because you have a Hyperdriver, Jumpstart only costs 1, which is going to get rid of this resource here. And this is going to come in for 5. So this is 5 damage being represented here by this dice. 5 damage coming in here to your opponent. And you are boosting. So you're going to go ahead and take this card. You're going to flip it. It is, in fact, a Mechanologist card, so it's going to be boosted there. Then you have Go Again, which means that now you can play something like a 0 to 60. 0 to 60 comes in at 4 and is boosted because you're going to want to boost it. That is a Crankshaft that you boosted, which means that this now gets another counter back up to 3. Super good. 0 to 60 is coming in for 4 damage. Now, we're just using this as an example to show you how much damage can be threatened on one simple turn. This was an entire hand of reds, mind you. An entire hand of reds is what this is. And now at this very moment, what I can do is I can also then pitch the Zipper Hit to come in with Zipper Hit for a whopping, what do you call this? 4. Yep, so it'll come in for 4. So this is another 4 damage. I am also going to, you guessed it, be boosting. So this card is going to get boosted. It is a Jumpstart, so it is a Mechanologist card. I will get Go Again. So right now, at this point, we have 4 boosted cards. We've been boosting the whole time through, right? Now what we do is we go ahead and remove this Plasma Barrel Shot count, this Steam counter, and play Plasma Barrel Shot for our final part of the attack here. Plasma Barrel Shot then comes in with X plus 1 equal to the number of times you boost this chain, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, plus 1, 5. So this is 5 damage here. Whoops, that is not the counter I wanted on this. Put that away. I want this counter instead. So that'll go to 5. And boom. There we go. So now this is our chain right now. In Commoner, most of the time, your hero only has 20 life. And at this very moment, we are presenting 8 plus 5, which is 13, plus 4, which is 17, plus 4, which is 21, plus 5, which is 26. 26 damage in one turn on a handful of reds, a Hyperdriver, and a Arsenal. you see how this works, right? This is now this setup is insanely different. Obviously, every different hand, but this is kind of the goal you're looking for here. You take a little bit of damage, and then you come in with 26, casual, right? And that is the best way to go about kind of working this hand to the best of its ability. Now, obviously, if you're going against Icelander, and the Icelander taxes you with a frostbite or something, it's going to be a little bit different. You're probably just going to end up not playing the zipper hit, and you're going to come in for even if for instance you couldn't play the zipper hit. Let's just say for instance, right? You have Plasma Barrel Shot coming in for 4 instead of that, which means that this is still 8 plus 5, which is 13 plus 4, 17 plus 4, 21. So that's still an entire hero's worth of health in one shot there. So let's say that at most they block 12 of that. 21 damage. You're still dealing, is that 7 damage? No. 9 damage. No. Yeah, 9 damage. And that's if they block the whole thing. But if they block the whole thing, then it just becomes your turn again. You draw up to 4 cards, and you just do it again. You have Payload, Crankshaft, Throttle, 0 to 60. You play Crankshaft, pitching the Throttle. You play 0 to 60, and then you use that one remaining resource to play Payload. Like, the game is insane. So like, let me even show you what that looks like here. So let's just put these guys over here again. Sorry, this is like not meant to be as long of a thing, but I really just kind of wanted to show you guys what a line looks like in the game, so that way you have an idea about what you're looking for when you are doing this. So there is that there. It goes to the graveyard. So if they survive that hit, good for them, right? Now your turn is to play Crankshaft, pitch Throttle, have technically 1 float, but you're going to boost. It's a Crankshaft, so you get to keep that counter on Hyperdriver, which is really cool, because you are also going to then get another resource from Hyperdriver. So now you're sitting at 2 free resources. Crankshaft is coming in for 5 go again. Then you're going to come in with 4 go again from 0 to 60, boosting again. You're going to boost that 0 to 60, which is a Mechanologist card, which will get you go again. And then you can go ahead and spend that last 2 resources that you've got here to play Payload, which is for 6, and Dominate. So now, even on a turn where you didn't have your Plasma Barrel Shot, you're coming in for 5 plus 4, which is 9, plus 6, which is 15 damage with 3 cards and 1 blue. And you just keep putting that pressure on, right? Keep on doing it. Now, the only downside with this deck, I gotta say, okay? The only downside with this deck is cards, is decks that specifically have a lot of defense reactions. Defense reactions are a big, big thing with this deck that kind of ruin it for a lot of people, simply because the defense reactions really stop everything. For instance, Ira with a bunch of defense reactions and like Sunkiss and stuff do really, really well into Dash, because Dash will eventually run out of gas. You got to realize that if you're going to play these cards here, you have to boost. Let's just get a new 4 new cards. Why not, right? Let's just say you got to get this here, right? So you boost. That gets a card from the top of your deck, puts it in there. You boost. That gets a card from your deck and puts it into your Banish Zone. And then you boost. That gets a card from your deck and puts it in your Banish Zone. So you got to realize that not only are you paying for the card, but you're also, so you're losing a card by playing it, but you're also losing another card by pitching, or by boosting. And so in doing so, it causes a lot of, people to essentially, after like 3 or 4, maybe even 5 turns, you lose like card after card after card after card. This card gets banished. This card, which is like keep taking cards from the top of your deck and throwing them into your Banish Zone. And that is essentially the concept of Dash. You get the ability to go again, which is really, really big, and especially since all of your attacks do really, really well as far as being big damage, it is definitely very, very rough to kind of determine what that looks like in these situations. So, again, that was an idea of a go first kind of deck for Dash. Going second is much along the same lines, except you utilize your free resources to attack with Talishar, as opposed to attacking with Plasma Barrel Shot. In some cases, even going second, depending on certain heroes, Plasma Barrel Shot is also pretty good because you are able to still attack with it. For instance, going against like a huge defensive deck, you do want a weapon that does at least do something, so you have your resources. But in most cases, if you end up decking out, you're already dead. I have not seen too many a situation in which a Dash has beaten somebody like an Oldhim or an Ira, strictly because of pure damage alone. In most cases, they have things like Steadfast or a bunch of D-reacts to kind of block out a lot of that damage, and then just come in and poke for a little bit with free resources, pretty much. And then they just cycle those resources back into their deck. They keep poking a little bit, and then defending a whole bunch, and then eventually Dash runs out of cards, and then you are dead, because they'll have like 20 cards, maybe not 20 cards, they'll have like 15 cards left in their deck, you'll have 0, and they'll be able to just start pumping out some additional damage. And then as you get into turns where you're running like, you get a hand like 3 blues and a red, that significantly brings your amount of attack damage down, so it ends up hurting a lot. But that's an idea behind Dash. So hopefully you guys learned a little bit in regards to Dash and how she works, and hopefully it gave you a idea to get the deck yourself. And I personally think Dash is a great way to kind of get into Flesh and Blood, not just the commoner version alone, but I think also if you're going to play things like Classic Constructed or Blitz, Dash is very good in both of those formats, and her deck is pretty inexpensive comparatively. The reason I wanted to choose Dash as our deck for the day to kind of show off is, one, she's really good in Commoner, which is a format that I focus a lot on here on the channel. But to top it all off, Bright Lights is coming out soon, so there will be new Mechanologist cards to be shown off in decks like these, as well as just like a general hype for Bright Lights itself. I think Bright Lights is going to be a super fantastic set. I'm very, very excited to try out the Crack, Shuffle, and Play thing. If you don't know about that, you can check out our video that shows off all the stuff for Bright Lights. And let me know in the comments if there's anything you'd change about the deck. I know Commoner has its own very niche community, and a lot of people really enjoy kind of doing some deck changing and so on and so forth, but this is one that I thought worked out for me. I've seen some pretty good success with this deck, especially those Plasma Barrel Shot lines where I'm coming in for like 20 to 26 damage. It's very, very powerful just to be able to remove that and come in for 5 for nothing, right? You get 1 card, you get practically 2 cards that have no cost at all and come in for way higher than 1 breakpoint. And threatening all of that is really going to put the tempo in your favor. And I think that's really what Dash wants, is to be able to have the tempo in her favor to move forward and push that stuff out to really do a whole bunch of damage. So thank you guys so much for watching. Apologize for a little bit of a longer video, but as you guys know, I like to go in a little bit of detail in regards to commoner decks or decks in general, so people get a good idea about how the deck is played and how they can better understand how a hero works, especially from a commoner perspective. So let me know what you guys thought in the comments down below. Make sure to like the video and also subscribe to the channel if you guys enjoy content like this and want to see more of it. And I will see you all very soon. All right, everybody. Nerd out.